Hi everyone, welcome back to Quilting with Sandy. Today is part 3 of our Scrappy Panel Quilt, and we're going to get it all done, and I'm going to show you the finished product at the end. In the last video, I said I was going to decide on a border and let you know, decide on a backing and let you know, and I'm going to show you how I put the quilt on the, how I quilt my quilt and how I put binding on. But I did sit here the other night talking to a friend, and I plucked a bunch of pieces apart and I counted up all my squares, and I actually ended up with enough to do a little scrappy border for the top and bottom. I know it's only going to add 6 inches and it's really not going to make my quilt rectangle, but I figured I might as well use up the squares, and like I said, I was just sitting here talking on the phone and messing around making the parts. So I did 2 of these little pieces, which are 40 little squares, and then the white across the top. So I'm going to put the 40 little squares up against here like this on the top and bottom. Ta-da! Oops. I think it'll look cute. I think it will finish it off, and like I said, you might as well use up your pieces. That's the whole point, is it's scrappy and we're going to use up what we have. The backing. I hemmed and hawed about what I wanted to do in the back. I wasn't in the mood to sew a bunch of pieces of fabric together. I'm ready to get moving on to my next project, and I want to get this one going and finished. So I dug through what I had laying around, and I had some Shannon Cuddle laying around. I had purchased this for another project, but it just wasn't the right color. I don't know if my computer wasn't telling me the right color, or I was thinking something else, or whatever. But it's this like teal color, and there is some teals in here, and I think anything would really go on the back of this. So that's what I went with. I found a piece of information from Shannon Minky Fabric that said if you turn your fabric right sides together, and if you fold your fabric right sides together and cut it with the back on the outside like this, you get less fuzz. And that really did work. I was really super happy with that, because then I didn't have fuzz everywhere. So I've already put the back on the quilt rack, and I've got my batting ready. So all I need to do is put these 2 borders on, and we could get this on the rack, and then I'm going to come back with you and show you how I do my little quilty thing, and then I'll show you how to make binding and the finished product. So I got the border sewed on, the top and the bottom. Now I'm at my rack. I've already gotten the back on here. You put the back with the right side down, wrong side up. Then I put the batting on. You pin it all the way across the top and the bottom, the backing, sorry. And now I'm pinning the quilt top, the bottom of the quilt top, to my leader here. It's kind of just like a quilt sandwich you would make for anything else. Make sure your pieces are facing the right way. And then I'm going to roll this up on this bar till the top matches the top, and then I'll do a basting stitch across there. I selected thread that matches the back. It's a blue turquoise color that will match that teal color. And then for the top quilting, I'm going to use a very, very light gray. It has a little sheen to it. I like the shiny fabric, or shiny threads, and it works really well with my machine. Now my machine, it's called Janome New Home. I'll show you. And it's just a straight stitching machine. I purchased it in a package with this quilt rack from a local sewing store, and it doesn't give me, it's not a mid-arm, it's just a normal arm, but it does give me 4 or 5 inches of workspace, and I kind of just go like this, row by rows, and I kind of do a little swiggle thing. I'll get some close-up pictures of that as I go. So let me finish pinning this on, and I'll base the top, and I'll see you back here in a couple seconds. So I've got the top basted down. I just use a quick long basting stitch because I pull most of it out. I catch a little bit on the side when I think of it, because sometimes I forget. So it's a Janome New Home, just a straight stitch. I just kind of do wiggles and squiggles. I don't know what you would even call them. I guess it's kind of like a stipple, but it's I like it large. So I'm just going to sew some. Hopefully it's not too vibrating. And see if you can get a look at how I do it. I try not to get it to look like a row of them. So I'll make some long and some short. I like big loopies. I like little loopies. I just get all in there. can see some of this. And that's kind of all I do. I use a little bit bigger stitch. I do try to keep it consistent, even though, as you can see, it's not super consistent. And I'm going to do the whole entire quilt like this. All wiggle worms. Well, there she is, all quilted. I thought I would try to give you some close-ups so you could kind of see my wiggles. I'm gonna take her off the rack now and get her trimmed up for binding. Alright, we're back at the sewing machine. I took out the basting stitches that I put in to secure this on the rack. Now I'm going to go along the edge like 1/8 of an inch. I didn't used to do this, and I saw someone else do it. And it seems to hold things together a little bit. I thought it would make it, the binding when you put it on, if you stitch before that, it would make it like too flat, but it doesn't. So I'm going to go right along the edge of this, about 1/8 of an inch, and then I'll take it over to the cutting board and trim it. So I put my walking foot on here. It's actually an AccuFeed foot. Janome calls it an AccuFeed. It helps feed from the top and the bottom. I'm using kind of a big stitch here. I think I'm going to use a 3.5. And it really doesn't matter what color I use because I'm going to cover it with navy binding. So I'll show you how I do that. Sorry, my machine makes noise. And if I miss a little bit, it's okay. I just don't want to get inside where you're going to see the binding. And I sew my binding on with a 1/4 inch seam. So, I did miss a little. That's why I said it's okay. So, here we go. Little sewing. It's just a little fine stitch all the way along the edge. It could actually even be bigger. So I'm going to do that all the way around the quilt. And I'll see you back here in a couple seconds. Okay, I have basically stitched all the way around the quilt. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how I trim it. This was a 2-inch strip. So after sewing one seam, it should be 1 3/4. It is a little wonky, a little wobbly, but I'm going to put it at 1 3/4 and see what it looks like. And it's not horrible. You can always tug it a little one way or the other to make it look better. I'm okay with that for now. So I'm going to trim the extra batting and backing away from the quilt. I do like to start this corner in a square. It kind of helps me keep it looking more square when I'm all done. So I'm just going to keep sliding it ahead. I know it's big and bulky. I'm just going to keep sliding it up on my board, putting the 1 3/4 mark on that seam as best as I can. It doesn't have to be totally perfect, just close. Sometimes I'll actually cut it in little bits and pieces if it's really wonky, to try to make it look straighter when it's done. No one's going to notice if the white is a smidge shorter here than it is here. It's more about the straightness with the last like color seam kind of thing. So you kind of just want to get it close. No one will see that little teeny bit. So let's get our 1 3/4 on there and down here. And try not to slide it all over the place. See, it got wonky there. But I'm just going to go with it. And I'm going to go all the way around the quilt. And then I'll review with you how to do binding. I'll show you how I do mine. Everybody does a little bit differently, I think. I like a double fold binding. I am using the navy, so I got to press that. Get it pressed and trimmed. I cut mine 2.5 inches. So I'll meet you back here when I'm ready to cut the binding. Okay, I pressed the navy I'm going to use for my binding. And now I'm getting ready to connect all the strips into one. I wanted to go over how to figure how much fabric you need and how many strips you need. So my quilt was 60 by 66. So I go 60 times 2 plus 66 times 2. I do it right on my phone. I don't even write it down. So I would go 60 times 2 plus 66 times 2 is 252. I divide that by 40 inches of usable fabric because I like to do my seaming, my piecing on the diagonal. You probably get more than 40, but I just use 40 as a round number. It comes out to 6.3, so I cut myself 7 2.5 inch strips. So now what I'm going to do, and this is definitely not how you should probably do this, but this is the way I like to do this because I hate sewing diagonal seams on the line because I use a presser foot that has a little bar on it. So I would really rather just sew a 1/4 inch seam. So I actually cut these. So I have this piece laying right side up on the lines of my cutting board. I take the last piece I was just using, lay it on a vertical line on my cutting board so it makes a T. I leave it hanging off the selvages so they get cut off. Then I use this ruler. It's called the Mini Simple Folded Corners ruler. And I put this right at the very top. I let this hang off and it gives me a 1/4 inch seam for sewing my bias together for my binding. So I do this, slide that out of the way. I try not to move it. I throw a pin in here. And then I slide it along and get to the next part. So this will be my top piece. So I got one more piece left. I'm going to lay it right side up on a horizontal line on my cutting board. I'm going to flip this right side down on my cutting board and put it on a horizontal line that makes a nice T. I have definitely a 1/4 inch hanging out both ends, and all the selvages are will be cut away. I'm going to lay this right down this side of this piece. I know it's navy and it's hard for you to see, but you can even use the top line because this is the 1/4 inch seam, and that's where I'm going to cut. So it gives me an exact 1/4 seam. And I just pop that off real easy so I don't move it too much. Throw a pin in there. And then now I have all 7 pieces cut and pinned together. I'm going to go back to my sewing machine and sew my 1/4 inch. I'll set you up over there so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, we're back at the sewing machine. I'm going to sew all my binding together. So I try to find the end, start with the first one. I have the 2 pinned together. They're only loosely pinned together. I do that just to kind of keep the 1/4 inch sticking out on both ends. I'm just going to line those up. I need a little jumper because this will eat, my machine will eat it. Just going to line those up, no stretching, just lay them nice and still. Stitch my 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to leave that on the sewing machine and go right to the next one, which I got to be a tangled mess showing you. Usually a tangled mess anyway. Shouldn't blame you, it's me. So like I said, I just use those as loose pins so that I kind of keep the 1/4 inch. But this crossover right here should be where your needle comes in, and that's your 1/4 inch, and that should come out right here where your 1/4 inch is. I'm just gonna get this in. Sometimes I get them pinned really nice and they stay there, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to reposition them and get it all organized. So I'll show you what they look like. I do have other color thread on here so you can see, besides navy. So I just sew my 1/4 inch seam. Then when I get all these sewed together, I'll go over to the sewing machine, or over to the ironing board, and I'll just press them all nice and flat and trim off the little dog ear. But they make a pretty good binding. I'm going to get my binding all put together, and then I'll set you up over by the ironing board because I want to show you. I just iron it. I just fold it all in half and give it a good press like that before I sew it on. So I'll show you that. Alright, we're over at the ironing board. I pressed all my seams to one direction. I don't know if it really matters, but I always do. And then what I do is have the wrong side up, right side down, and I fold this over. So it's, because I do a double fold binding, and then I press it all the way down. Just like that. And then I'll take it to the end of my board and I kind of crisscross fold it just to get it out of the way. And then when I go back to the sewing machine, it's all kind of in a little package. Okay, I'm gonna sew the binding on. I like to start with maybe a foot loose. I'm just going to slide this in here, line the binding edge up. This is the 2 pieces, like the fold over. You want your fold on the inside of your quilt. I'm going to line it up with the edge. Put my presser foot down here, and I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way down and around the quilt. And then when I get to the end, I'll come back with you and show you how I put the 2 ends together so that it works out. I'm almost to the corner. I'm going to go right up to it. I'm going to try to stop about a 1/4 inch from the edge here, and then I kind of go at a diagonal off. I don't cut my thread. I just leave it hang there. And I am using a contrasting thread on the back, even though you can't really see it, because I find it easier to make sure when I fold this over if it's a darker color or contrasting. You can't do that if you have a really light binding, but this is a nice navy, so pretty much doesn't matter. I could use any color I want. Then I pull this straight ahead in the other opposite direction so it looks like a mitered corner there. I give it a little smush. Then I lay this end down so it's lined up along this edge, lined up here, and then I start sewing. I do actually back tack a little bit at this point. I get on there, take a couple stitches, get so where I'm over that 1/4. And I don't know if other people do this or not, but I like to take a couple back tacks there to make sure that's going to stay when I flip it over. And then I'm just going to continue all the way around the whole entire quilt. Okay, I sewed the binding all the way around, leaving, I don't know, 8-10 inches not sewn, so that I can connect these 2 pieces of binding. So what I do is I take the top piece and go about halfway. I lay it flat on my cutting board, like this. I lay that same ruler I used before on there to get a 45 line. I just line a couple dots up here along the edge. Get my rotary cutter, which is not there. And I cut that off. I wiggled a little bit. I hope that's straight. Nope. Okay, now it's straight. Now I lay it back down where it belongs. Then I take this piece and I tuck it inside there. And if it's too long, I just kind of bunch it up in there or whatever. Just get it out of the way. And I tuck it in where it would go so I can see these two lines where they connect. And I give it a little snug because I like it tight there. A little bit tight. Not super tight. And I actually take a pencil. I wish this was a different color. But I have a chalk pencil here. And I draw the diagonal line that I just cut onto this other piece of fabric. I have a 45 line on the edge. There's my chalk line. I'm going to measure over 1/2 inch. Try to keep it as close as possible. I can actually cut it right here. And I'm just going to cut that just like it is. So there's my drawn line. There's my cut line, 1/2 inch apart. Now when these go together, believe it or not, they're going to match up. I usually fold this up real tight, put this out on the board for out by my sewing machine, and then I fold this up so I can get this to lay right sides together. Remember, so your folds are going to touch. With this laying, see, I'm a dummy, I cut it too short. Not too short, I just made it, I should have given myself more room, that's all I'm saying. So I'm going to have to fight it. So now I'm going to line these two edges up, have a 1/4 inch on the top, 1/4 inch on the bottom, and stitch it right down there. I'm just going to line the edges up without stretching. Like I said, I should have made this longer. But that's what happens sometimes. So I hope you can see. I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch away from the edge I just cut. There we go. And there's my 1/4 inch cut sewn. And when you lay this back out, I push my seams to one side, whatever. And there you have it. It's a finished piece, basically, and now I just have to finish sewing this, and I'll meet you back at the ironing board. What I like to do now is push this binding out nice and taut, nice smooth edge there, and press it really hard because you have to stitch in this stitch where these two pieces of fabric come together. And if you don't pull that snug, you miss the back of your binding. I kind of tug on the binding while I'm ironing it. Give it a good snug, hard press so that I can get that over as far as possible so it's not, there's no little fold in there to push my stitches outward into the quilt and miss the binding on the back. So I'm going to go all the way around this quilt, ironing and tugging this binding out of the way. This one's not too super big, so it's not that hard on my ironing board. And I catch any threads like that one. Because once you sew them in there, boy, they don't come out. So I try to catch them as I go. And I'm just going to keep pushing this out and ironing all the way around. I don't know if you've used these binding clips before, but they seem to be, if you put the color on top and put it right where you're going to stitch, then you can see that you're going to catch it on the back where the clear is. So I kind of use them as eyeballs in a way. So I put that right on the edge, and then I make sure that there's enough fabric sticking out the bottom there. So it's just like an 1/8. I'll tuck all those threads in. I want to show you how I do the corner real quick. So press both sides out of your corner and flip it over to the back side. However you folded it first the last time, so this side went in first, so I want to do the opposite. So I'm going to fold this over, make it nice and square there, like a miter. Make this corner square. I'm going to put one of these clips on here. Just about like that. Then I'm going to take this side. This thread won't get out of the way, I may have to cut it. And I pinch it and fold it at the same time, so it's coming in the other direction. And I try to match them up a little bit. And if I do have to cheat it, I cheat it towards the the other side of the binding so that it catches when you go around that corner. Then I'm going to stitch in the ditch. I'm going to put my needle so it goes right in this seam. I'm going to use white on top, navy on the bottom, so you won't see it go through the back. And when I'm all done, I love to wash my quilts. So I'm going to wash this one, and then I'll get some still pictures or some video of it completed so you can see it all together. And then I wanted to just go over what we're going to do for next week. Well, the Scrappy Panel Quilt's in the dryer. I'll show you pics at the end. Just wanted to check back in with you. I really enjoyed making this quilt. It was lots of fun. You got to get your panels out, get them sewn up. How else are they going to keep you warm on the couch? Next week, I'm going to do a red and white quilt. I'll put the fabric requirements and cutting instructions in the description below. So maybe if you want to join along, you can get a color, red, blue, whatever you want, and make this quilt with me. It'll be lots of fun. It's basically going to be a double Irish chain. This is just a little sketch I made of it. And in those little squares, I'm going to make a star. I'll show you that next week as well. I already ordered my fabric before I drew this out and figured out the fabric requirements. So my border won't be quite as big as it could be and kind of as I would like to be, but sometimes you have to do with what you've got. I ordered different color reds, different print reds. They're kind of the same color because I didn't want to do solids. You're more than welcome to do anything you like. You could do solids, batiks, scrap. This could be totally scrappy. It would be very cute. You just need a solid-ish background. That reads solid. Mine is going to be a creamy white and has a little dot of something on it. I can't remember. And my border is kind of a bigger print. The rest is all small prints. But you can this would definitely look good in any kind of solid. Blue solid, red solid, whatever your house is, whatever you want it to be. And I really think it would be cute. I might make this twice because this would be really cute in all different colors. It might even be cool to take the background and make that your dark color and make your squares a light color. That'd be cool. I might do that too. So anyway, I'll put the fabric requirements and the cutting instructions down below. Grab your stuff, get together, start cutting up, and I'll meet you back here next week and we'll start making blocks. Bye guys. All warm and cozy. Hope you give it a try.